My computer's
Yeah.
frozen here.
I got it for you if y'all need. So I move to approve the installation of concrete/block exterior stairs to access the basement of 727 Butler Street as submitted on application P-HIS-200013.
Thank you, Garden. I couldn't get to the
Yeah,
address in the
I got
motion.
two screens going here. It's the only way
Yeah,
I could do
you're
this.
awesome. That's good. You're a pro. Do I have a second? Canarsa seconded. Any discussion? All right, all in favor signify by saying yes. Lewis,
Yes.
Davenport,
Yes.
Canarsa,
Yes.
Patterson,
Yes.
Straker is a yes. Motion passes.
Thank you, guys. Quick question.
Yes,
Do I need a permit?
Yes.
you do, and you will get a certificate of appropriateness from the commission, but you do need a permit to do that work with I believe the zoning group, correct,
Okay.
Cindy?
With Michigan Township Services and a zoning permit.
There you go.
Michigan Township Services and a zoning permit. Okay, great.
Thank you so much, Dan. Good luck.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Bye-bye, y'all.
Aye.
Okay, we'll go to our second application, which is 720 Water Street. Sean Steele is presenting this application on behalf of the owner, Dorothy Demarest. I think there's a probably small conversation at the beginning of this, confirming that these structures are contributing. They're listed as contributing. I would tell you that looking through the guidelines, they do follow guidelines as contributing structures. So we might be able to shorthand that a little bit by disagreeing or having conversation about that status. But I will let Sean amplify what he put in his application in terms of what you'd like to do, Sean. And I think we might have a couple of folks who might want to contribute to the conversation as well who are online.
Okay.
Hi, Sean.
Howdy. Yeah, we are in the process of putting a new seawall in on that property, attaching the Saugatuck seawall to the Jim Dewey residence there, the Dewey residence. Part of that process is where this shack is. So I've had conversation with the Saugatuck Historic District, or I'm sorry, the Saugatuck Douglas History Center, an interest in getting a hold of this building, their plans. So on my application, I put on there that I wanted to remove the building because I don't think there's a real good game plan of how to remove the building. But I do know that the building where it's at right now is a safety concern for the site, as well as a flooding concern for the site, as about a third of the building, if you saw from the pictures, is in the water right now. That particular area there, along with the boat launch, is an issue with the water coming in onto Water Street, as well as down by Retro Boats. So we feel it's pretty important to get that seawall tied in on this area here, as well as we have some gas meters that have to be raised that are in the water, freezing up with the high water. So again, I'm just asking if this building could be removed from the site. If the Saugatuck Douglas History Center wants to take on that project and preserve it and have it go somewhere else, we're willing to work with them on that. But we feel where it is on our site there is not good for the future.
And Sean, just a question: how does the owner play into this? I know you're applying on behalf of the owner. Are they? They're obviously your partner in putting the seawall in and protecting the property. What's their perspective?
Well, Mr. Demhurst passed away early January So we've been working with the family to kind of help them get through this situation. And we have a long-term agreement with them on the site. So we will ultimately be managing the site for several years. And with that being said, they really don't have the means to pursue doing more work on the site. So
Okay.
simple term is I'm the guy.
Okay.
But the existing little house there, because we have to raise the grade through all this as well, we would like to raise that up where that's at. I think they call that the sleeping quarters. So that's part of it as well. We did disconnect the power that was run to that building. And we're ready for the next phase. I think we still have to work with the historic center to find out how to implement the next phase, but that's kind of where we're at. We needed to know where you guys were at with this before we could talk.
And the next phase being either removing the building, moving the building, and lifting the other one.
Correct.
Okay.
I don't think anyone has any intentions of destroying the building. There is a safety factor of working on that building of will it be safe to do, because we have no idea what's underneath it, how it's hanging there. So it is a challenge, and I think it's something that can be accomplished. It's just we just need to have more investigations after we find out that we can move it.
So
Okay.
this is Keith Patterson. So specifically, the conversation here is about the demo of the fish house that is underwater just north of the Star and the smokehouse, correct? And the other building is not being discussed today, is that correct?
Well, we don't want to demo this because the History Center wants to preserve it and move it. That's their goal on that side of it.
They want to move the building that's underwater?
Yes.
But that's not why we're here, right?
Well, I thought the application was for demolition of the one that's in the water.
That's what I want to clarify.
After-
It's a demo of the fish house and the smokehouse, correct? On the
I
left?
believe the application actually said removal,
It did.
not say demolition.
Okay.
So I
The
actually,
left that demolition from the building. That's where.
yeah.
I just want to clarify what we're talking about. Demo or removal to me means the same thing at this point, right?
I don't think it does. I don't think we should assume that. I think demolition means it's gone forever. Removal means it's repurposed. And there's actually our guidelines refer to both
Okay.
for a contributing structure. So I took it, now you correct me, Sean, if I'm wrong, I took it as you were careful with your words because you were open to somebody doing something with it, but your application is it's a safety concern. Something needs to be done with it. Keith, I kind of took your question too about this application is for those two structures. Sean or the applicant would come back for the second structure to be raised. That's a different conversation. You're just noting that we're not ruling on that building
I
tonight.
just wanted to make sure we know what the scope of the project was.
Correct. That's good.
Okay.
Tim, I believe I did ask on this application to raise the third structure as well.
Okay. So that's fair. You did. I'm projecting a little bit on that, which is not good. What I meant by what I said was we would need to have a lot of other conversation, I think, then around that. So we'll handle these two things in this application, but let's do one first, the first two buildings to be removed or moved. And then let's talk about how that other structure would be lifted up, because we don't have any drawings or anything of like what that would look like, but we can get there and talk about that. Does that sound logical?
Okay.
I know we have some folks from the History Center on the phone. Sean, before I ask them to speak on this, any other comments?
Yeah, Tim, this is Garnet. So, okay, so I'm looking at this picture on, looks like page 22. So we're talking about the two buildings on the left. One looks like a shed, and one looks like a building. And I know seeing these from the river, that one is quite a bit underwater. Those to be removed,
Yep,
and the one then to the right or the north to then be elevated.
correct.
Okay, very good. Thank you. I love this picture. It's good.
And is that
Thanks.
part of the application, both of these, or just one?
It says both.
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 So we're here to approve the elevation of the right building as well?
Mhm. Yes.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. So
Exactly where it's stay exactly, or was it moved over at all, or is it just right where it is? Just
For the
elevating it
third
right up?
building?
The building that's going to be raised up, it's going to stay exactly on the footprint?
Correct, straight up in the air.
So let's go one by one and make sure we're capturing everyone's questions. John, do you have any more questions of clarity around the application or purpose? John Canarsa?
I don't, no.
We can come back to everyone too, once we hear from everyone. Keith, any more questions of clarity or purpose of the application?
Yeah, the only question is our decision going to be based on a contingency or an agreement that it's going to be removed or demolished?
Well, I think we need to hear from the History Center
Okay.
before we can fully make that.
Yes, that's my question is, are we here to, if there's a contingency, we will approve it.
Yeah, so I think we need to know, gosh, sorry. We need to know what the options are in terms of who might want the building or what reuse might exist for it or be proposed for it before we would make a decision on the application to remove it. I'll keep going with Commissioners. Davenport, any other questions of clarity or purpose of the application? Did we lose you? Oh, you're on mute. You're on mute, Jennifer.
Oh my gosh.
Sorry about that. Can we just deal with one building at a time? Maybe deal with the building to be removed first, and then deal with the one to be elevated?
Yep.
Okay, that's it.
Okay. Garnet?
I'm good.
Any more
I'm
questions?
good. Nope, good.
Okay, did I miss anyone? It looks like Vic's on the phone and a few other folks. I see Robin now. Would one of you like to talk about the History Center's intentions?
I can go first. This is Vic.
Can barely hear you, Vic.
Is this better?
Yep, a little bit.
Okay. I don't know how many of you have received the letter that we sent to the commission. You should all have a copy of that.
It is in our packet, yes.
I wonder if you've all read that.
Yes.
Is that a yes for everybody?
The
Okay.
one with the history in it, yes.
Yes.
Yes. Mhm.
I think that pretty much explains what our situation is. Without having met with Sean, we being a preservation unit, we like to see things that are contributing to the community saved. I was on the commission there when the commission okayed the demolition of the building right next to the fishing shed on the downriver side. So we're not in the business of saving everything we can see or might not be contributing. And I just, for your information, and this might be a point of legality, I got a response from Marilyn Hebert today, making sure that she was listening, and I'm not sure she is. But anyway, she wrote back and said, for your information, the Demris family has no control or input on the fate of the building. Any agreement has to be between you and Sean Steele. I'm wondering legally, how does a leased property or a leasee or is it leasee, have the power to determine what happens on a property that is not owned by them. It's just a point of interest.
I would guess regardless, whatever decision is made, the person who owns the property would make the final decision on their property.
Well, then I'm wondering if we're not kind of jumping ahead.
I don't know, Vic. It's not uncommon for an applicant to fill out an application for work on a property on behalf of an owner. We've had builders do that. We've had leasees do that. So
Can I just ask a question for
Mr.
Vic?
Chairman, when you have time, Ms. Osmond has probably
sorry,
has some good
I see
input
now,
for you.
Cindy. Thank you.
It would depend on the terms of the lease. Whatever the terms of the lease said would be controlling. And if the lease says that Mr. Steele has control over the property, whether or not that building gets removed or demolished or lifted, that would be dependent on the terms of the lease.
So we could go ahead, or you could go ahead tonight and make a decision pending what is in the lease.
Mhm.
Okay. We've met with the Demarest brother and sister there. Getting a little feedback here. Can you hear me?
No.
Hello? Hello?
We can barely hear you, Vic.
Hello?
We can hear you, Mr. Bello.
Okay.
Very clear.
Good enough. We are mostly concerned with the last remaining commercial fishing shanty in Saugatuck, Michigan. We understand what the value of the property is. Maybe I have a question for Sean. Sean, can you tell us a guesstimate of when you plan to install the seawall?
Whenever the permits are approved by DEQ and the Army Corps.
See, that would kind of determine how we might proceed. Are you anticipating that the building has to be removed before the seawall is begun?
Yes.
Okay.
Again, one of the reasons why we're here at the meeting tonight is to get approval for the removal of the building so that we can determine what to do at that point. But the building does have to be moved for, again, since the new seawall. So I want to make sure that we stick with what this meeting is for tonight and not go off into what might be.
And that's why I made a point of clarification, I think, with what Keith asked, which was removal versus demolition. The builder letter or at some point in the application, the word demo was used, but your application, I interpreted as you need to put a seawall in. You could pick that building up, move it back, sit it down, move it off site if you needed to. You're not going as far as saying you're going to put it back in its exact spot, but as of now, you're not saying you're demoing it. So if you need to fix what's underneath it since it's in the water, that was my interpretation of what your application is.
Correct. When the builder looked at it, he determined that it was unsavable.
Correct.
From the builder's standpoint. Doesn't meet building codes, blah, blah, blah. You can go all the way down the list. So that was his recommendation. And again, if the History Center wants to take on that challenge and do that, you know, there's more than enough reason why we can't help them with that. But again, if we want to talk about future, is a lot of legal paperwork that has to happen from liability standpoint and so forth and so on, which I don't think pertains to the meeting tonight. I think what I wanted to make at the meeting tonight was to get approval to continue on with the seawall, but also let everyone know that I do want to work with them to do something with that building versus a destroy. If we get another high water like what we had the middle of July, I mean, I saw the building move with the waves, with the wakes that was coming in. So, you know, the seawall, in my opinion, is one of the most important things. And then the second most important is to make sure that we're safe, and the third is trying to save what is there or at this point.
Okay.
I'm
I think
wondering-
everyone, I don't want to put words in anyone's mouth, but I think after reading the history of the shacks, we all recognize the historical significance of them. I think they're also in danger. And one of the conversations of kind of the core purpose of our commission has been to save contributing properties that have either contribute structurally to the history of the city or in the narrative. And Sean, your firsthand knowledge of that with your cottage project. The narrative, if you remember, was just as important in that project as the cottages were. And we really appreciated that you respected that and saved what you could and supplemented what you could around that. This is in many ways a similar sort of application, would be sort of my commentary on this. If the owner of the property continues to let these cottages go at the rate they are, regardless of the safety factor for the buildings next to them, which in and of itself is a factor, someone will and someone has indicated interest in developing this property. And if they are approved to be demolished, there could be another structure go up exactly what's to the north of this. So there's a long game here in trying to protect these structures, whether they are on-site or off-site, in my opinion. One person's opinion. I recognize the importance of the structure, but we really need to think about the applicant is asking from a safety standpoint, impacting their property, and we need to look at the long game of what might happen to this property should these buildings fall into more disrepair and the land gets sold.
I'm wondering, Tim, can you hear me?
Yes, much better now.
If what of the ordinances there would you apply for either demolition or removal?
Well, good question. If I don't have my dual screens, but if Cindy or Kirk can scroll up to the conditions for removal or demolition, one of the first of the four, I believe, in our guidelines pertains to thank you, right there. Exceptions for relocation and demolition. There's four listed there, A through D. I would say we would be evaluating if A constitutes an exception, which is hazard to the safety of the public or the occupants. And if in the opinion of the commission, proposed demolition is the only reasonable way to improve that or correct that condition. And I would put the seawall under that as part of that.
So should we go through and comment on each of these criteria?
Sure. So I commented on A. If anyone else wants to look at these, B is it's a resource that's a deterrent to a major improvement program that will be of substantial benefit to the community. C is the retention of the structure would cause undue financial hardship to the owner. And D is retention of the structure would not be in the best interest of the community.
So that's our criteria then.
Correct. If one of those if one of those is met, because that
Yeah.
in the
Mrs.
first paragraph,
Garn, yeah, I think 3 of those at least are met, so.
Yeah.
Well, let's go through them and agree or disagree, because that's our criteria, right?
Yes. So I think B is also met. I mean,
Let's go back to A. Everybody comment on A.
I believe it's met.
absolutely.
Yeah, me too.
Lewis, yes.
Yes, yes.
Davenport, yes.
Yes.
Narsa?
Yes.
Okay. Keith,
Yes.
how about B? Lewis,
Yes.
Davenport,
Yes, because of the seawall.
Patterson,
Yes.
Canarsa,
Yes.
Straker, yes. Retention of the structure would cause undue financial hardship to the owner, provided that hardship or difficulty claimed by the owner is not self-created or the result of a failure to maintain the property in good repair, which itself is not the result of financial hardship of the owner. All feasible alternatives to eliminate the financial hardship, which may include offering the property for sale at its fair market value or moving the resource to a vacant site, should have been attempted and exhausted by the owner. Lewis,
Yes.
Canarsa,
I don't have enough information on that one.
Patterson,
Yes.
Davenport.
I don't really think it applies, but I don't think we need more than one. So we already have 2.
I'm with you. I'm just
Yeah.
honoring Keith's request that we just
Yep.
put that all on the record.
Sure.
I don't know that this 100% applies either. I have a hard time with demolition by neglect, and it's on the verge of that because of my guessing because of hardship, but I'm on the fence there. And then D, retention of the structure would not be in the best interest of the community. Lewis,
Yes.
Davenport,
Yes.
Patterson,
Yes.
Narsa,
Wait, it says retention of the structure would not be in the best interest of the community.
right.
What do we?
As is.
As is, yeah.
Okay. Okay. Yeah.
I appreciate your hesitation on that because I'm hesitating on that one as well. I don't agree with this one. I would say no on this,
It's fair.
but it's the interpretation of what's going to happen to the structure versus the way it is right now. I would say no because the way it is right now, it's not hurting the community, but I think it could very quickly turn that way.
If you look at all of our criteria and say, this is demolition criteria, so it meets all the requirements for demolition. So now the part 2 is, does somebody want it, and do they want to take it, and are we going to make this decision contingent on the taking? And then you get into a long, protracted taking discussion.
Well, and then retention of the structure would be in the best interest if it were preserved somewhere else, maybe,
Correct.
right? So that's
Agreed.
why this one's like a 2-part thing.
Agreed.
My only concern is that if there's no funds to take for the History Center to take it and preserve it, that's going to be a cost. There's going to be a cost involved in that. And it's already underwater. Now we're going to just let it sit there and maybe I don't know what's going to happen to it, but it's a hazard right now.
Right.
If the water goes up, I don't know. I don't know how far underwater it is. I couldn't see from the land side. But
I just want to interact here as well. I've already met, we've kind of determined that we've met that the structure could be demolished. That's not my choice. I agree with you. There is a financial side of this, which I'm not going to take a part of. So worst case scenario, it would be demolished. We've met the criteria for that, it appears here. But I don't know if a decision should be made on whether or not it's retained or not, because you have already met the demolish. But
Correct. So
I agree.
Yeah.
I agree. I think Keith, to a point you made a little bit ago, I'm not sure that if then statement is quite right. I think we need to first rule on the application to remove the structure. We'll just call it remove right now. And if that criteria has been met to remove a contributing resource, which means in essence it could be demolished, we vote on that.
Yep.
Part two on that is if we've met that criteria and we've said we've agreed that the applicant will do that, that does not preclude another party like the History Center from working with the applicant to relocate that. And I would hope that would happen. I would celebrate that. I think it'd be awesome. And I love that the applicant would be willing to talk about that. But I don't think the two things are joined together.
Right. And the key word there is hope. So
Yes.
the decision tonight is, do we make a decision to allow demolition or not?
Correct.
Okay.
Is there, can you attach a time frame to that? Because this would have to happen pretty quickly if it were going to be rescued and moved or something, right? I would think.
Correct.
Like that would be a condition. Because Sean doesn't want to wait for this to go through the History Center's, or their meetings or whatever. How long could that take? We all saw like how long the root beer barrel took. That was a nice thing that happened, but it takes a long time.
Well, but I think that's the burden of the History Center, honestly. I mean, I think they can call a special meeting and they can tap into special funds and they can have a dialogue and develop partnerships to do that. But I think that's their conversation. I would hope that, the History Center would do that pretty quickly as well. I don't want anybody on the call to hear this dialogue as being in favor of demolition, because no one is. I think in any historic district, no one would be sitting on these boards if we were in favor of that. But recognizing the need from the applicant and the desire to save it if possible, I think then the burden, if you will, is on the people that want to save it.
That's why I brought up a time frame. It seems like a logical thing, it's fairness to both sides. Like, what's a logical amount of time? And maybe Sean can answer that. How he wants that to go.
Well, I have met with Eric. He stopped at the site to look at the site to kind of see what's in front of him there. We've talked about a time frame. We talk about, a contract in order to do it with the time frame. We haven't got into the details of it, but I have said that, there's a 2-week time frame to remove the building off the site once our permits are in place, because we also have weather to deal with winter coming up. And I think that's a reasonable time frame. Now, whether or not the resources are there to make that all happen, again, I put that on them that, that's kind of what they do. That's what they got to work out on their side. So,
John, I have a question.
Yeah.
What's the cost involved? Do you know? Did you get a price from the bill? Just out of curiosity does the History Center know what the cost is?
I'm trying to keep them on their side of the street and I'm on my side of the street. I know what it'll cost to remove it. But I don't want to, that's what they have to do on their side.
You know what it'll cost to demo it, you mean, right?
Yes.
Yes. So removing it or moving it is a whole different thing. And that's what they would have to take on, finding out for that. But you would give them 2 weeks and let's let them chime in too, Tim. I don't know what you're thinking here, but I'm trying to figure out like what's fair. Sean needs to keep moving, but he's making this thing available. Is 2 weeks enough time, Vic or Robin, whoever, to?
But the only thing, John, is I don't think we're in the business of negotiating that between the applicant and the History Center. We're in the business of deciding on the application. So if we decide to put a motion forward to allow the demolition slash removal of the two buildings. And let's just say, for the sake of argument, the lifting of one, that starts, that's a decision that's made if we vote to approve that. And then the dialogue between the History Center and the applicant goes on from there.
I agree, Tim.
That makes sense.
Yep.
And and no one on the call should hear that as in, a desire to put hardship on one party or the other. It's just sort of the most equitable decision based on what we're asked to do.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the important parts of this, Tim, is, I wanted to make sure that everybody involved knew the process and what we were going through. I didn't want anyone not knowing. I let everyone know that I had the meeting. I let everyone know how I worded it. They were able to be a part of it, and I wanted them to see it to make sure that they understood what they're looking at. Because, it's different when you're driving down the street or when you're driving, behind it on the boat. But, we actually opened up the doors and looked at it and assessed it, and, already started coming up with some ideas of how to, make it be removable. And then they had talked about, they knew some people who have done this before, and they'd want to bring them in to have them look at it. So I don't think there's anything here that I wasn't upfront with, to make sure that we understood what tonight's meeting was about and where we wanted to go with it afterwards. And I'm sure I'll get 10,000 calls tomorrow and next week about everything and all the ideas. But I did want to make sure that if they were going to get involved with it, that, that they had to take care of that on their side. I think the whole legal side is a whole different argument of who's in charge of what at that point. So I think at some point there's got to be papers signed for who's responsible for what.
Sure. I just would like to say this so that it's in the minutes, if I'm to make sure that I'm interpreting this correctly. Keith, you kind of went here. So if we are making a motion and voting on demolition based on the exceptions met that we just went over, the relocation number 3 and number 4 on the page here are irrelevant because we've decided on number 2. If we vote no, that we're not in favor of the demo or removal, it would then move to it would have to meet a condition for relocation. Correct?
I don't read it that way. I thought 1 is relocation or demolition, and 2, A, B, C, and D are all the exceptions. So it's either relocation or demolition, and then 2 applies to the rest of these, applies to either one. That's how I read it. And
I read it as a commission, we don't really want either one, but
agreed.
Exceptions. Okay.
But yeah, I think that it doesn't say for relocation it's this, or for demolition it's that. It's for whatever applies. And we're saying you can either you can relocate it if you have someone who's going to pay for it, I guess, but it does qualify for a demolition. So it qualifies either or under 2A and B.
I'm tracking with you. Thank you for that. Vic or anyone on the phone who's interested in the project, any other comments or questions?
Well, since I brought up the discussion that we're just having, I'm wondering if you could put that back up there again. There. Just explain to me, what the safety hazard is to the general public. I mean, it's practically fenced off. Nobody can, if you put a no trespassing sign there, what's the safety factor?
Who are you asking that to?